Hey guys, welcome to this weekend's premium newsletter. So what a wild week for cryptocurrency it's been. If nothing else, understand that this has been one of those weeks that we'll remember for a while as being a milestone in the colorful history of crypto. We've had some highs and some literal lows, but some things in between as well. So let's start with some good news. The CFTC and SEC met with Congress on Tuesday to discuss the future of cryptocurrencies, ICOs, and the blockchain technology itself. While there were some concerns raised, the overall rhetoric was one of regulators seeking to work with the blossoming technology and not against it. Be sure to watch our video regarding the implications of what that meeting could possibly raise. Published on Thursday, an internal report attributed to JP Morgan, the once publicly hostile organization to crypto, had a very different tone. We see this as further evidence that these sorts of organizations are really just working on their own cryptocurrency solutions while publicly dismissing the technology in an attempt to slow it down so that they can catch up. So now let's discuss some exchange news. First, as we vehemently stated several times, Binance was not hacked. They encountered a database issue and did a lot to resolve it. No, it's not what we wanted to happen, of course, but the team was very open with what they were doing and had updates every 2 hours. Now let's compare that to another exchange, BitGrail. In January, BitGrail started to limit withdrawals for its customers. A few days ago, BitGrail suspended Nano, or formerly Rayblock's, markets. Now today, the revelation is being made that BitGrail has been hacked of 15 million Nano, currently worth about $132 million. Not good. What's made the situation even worse is their actions throughout the month of January indicate that BitGrail knew about the hack weeks before the public announcement today and have been doing their best to try and cover it up. As we learned from the Nano team's official statement on the matter today, the BitGrail owner contacted them to attempt to get Nano to fork to invalidate the stolen funds, similar to how Ethereum forked after the DAO hack in 2015. While we're not experts on the block lattice technology powering Nano, and to be fair, it's proprietary to Nano, it's apparent that the Nano team believes a fork would not be possible or warranted in this situation. The BitGrail owner went on to threaten the Nano team, which just further cements his position as pretty much the most hated person in crypto right now. Look, if you were affected by this hack, our thoughts are with you, and we lost some crypto as well, but thankfully not a lot. Both examples of Binance and BitGrail highlight the absolute importance of getting your funds off exchanges if you care about protecting them. Don't let yourself become a victim of a hack like this in the future. And so as a last little piece of news, we've been watching the top 100 Bitcoin addresses gain over these past few weeks. All in all, this highlights what we already knew. Those who can look past the FUD are those who will walk away from this bear market that much richer. Basically, the crypto rich get richer while the weak hands get poorer. Which camp do you want to belong to? All right, guys, I'll see you Monday. Now over to Doc.
Hey folks, it's Doc for ReadySetCrypto. I'm going to start out this portion of the report with a question that came in from one of our customers. Tony, I would like to ask if you could explain how you draw the trend lines and what they're based on. It will help me a lot in understanding how the market is moving in a longer perspective. Okay, so to do that, let's do a couple of things. First of all, let's change the chart around and let's delete some of the indicators that we have on here, such as the CHOP index. So now we have that, and actually we don't need, at this time, we don't need these Bollinger Bands on here. So now we just have straight price and volume on the chart, so we can talk about trend lines. So first I'll talk about what trend lines are and how we can go about using them. And understand before I get into this, there's nothing magic about trend lines. It's simply just another tool that we use in technical analysis. So the first thing I want to do is that there's longer term trend lines and there's shorter term trend lines. This will make a little bit more sense when I do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squish up the chart and I'm going to take a longer time frame perspective on this, a longer time frame perspective. So we're going back on Bitcoin now in 2013, 2014, and then we've seen the recent rise, which has gone almost parabolic into December, January. So what you can see is a couple of things here. First of all, if I look at the lows here, there is a trend line that appears to match all of these significant major lows. So If you think about this, every major correction that we've had really over the past half year. So there was one that we had here that was particularly dreadful back at the early part of July. And then we had another dreadful correction back here in September. Made you feel like Bitcoin was all over. I think this was the Jamie Dimon comments right back here, amongst other FUD data points. Okay, so we've had these along the way. And so we also had one just a few days ago that came down to test this trend line. So this is a longer time frame trend line that we use for this chart. We can also see this if we go out from the daily chart. If you go out to a weekly chart, we can see kind of the same thing here. We can see that all of these major lows have been touched by this trend line. So does that mean that the next time we come down to that trend line that the price is going to stop? No, it doesn't mean anything. However, it does become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy many times for no other reason that it becomes a target that everybody can see. I've heard it put this way: in a sea of sand, a single flag that stands up becomes a target. Imagine that you're out in the middle of a desert and all you can see, for as far as the eye can see, is just sand. Yet, way in the distance, you see a little flag sticking up. What do you think you're going to do? Well, you're going to go walk over to that flag. And this is the same concept here, is that anything that sticks up, anything that becomes a obvious target in the market is often what will be tested. Okay, so we got that test out of the way. Now, let's go back to the shorter time frame daily chart. So we're just going to move over here to the daily chart, and then let's squish this together. Let's get a better perspective on things. The other thing is that we have a channel in place here. So a channel is, what it's doing is it's on the upper trend line of the channel. We're connecting all of the significant lower highs. Okay, all of these significant lower highs. And on the bottom end of the channel, we're connecting all the significant lower lows in this case, all the way along. So this is a downtrend. We have a series of lower highs and lower lows. Now, a lot of people ask me questions such as, do you only connect them off of the wick of the candlestick or the body? So in other words, like down here, we're seeing that all of these are generally the wicks or the bottom shadows or wicks. It doesn't really matter what you call them, but they're the lower shadow, bottom wick of the candlestick, in which case we're connecting them all. Now, if we were going to draw this just off of the bodies are the actual colored part of this, we'd see a much different trend line here. And so to me, this makes a lot more sense to connect the lower trend line off of the wicks instead of the bodies. Whereas we look at the upper trend line, which is descending, typically these are being connected off of the bodies. Or if there is a wick, it's not very big. So this shows a couple of things. First of all, there is one of the laws that I go by is that tops are a process, tops are a process, tops are a process, tops are a process. Bottoms, however, are an event. Bottoms are an event. Look at this. Every time we have these big tails down here, this is an event. It usually doesn't occur for very long. This is where we're looking for those types of waterfall declines that bounce back up like that. So bottoms are typically an event, while tops can get very torturous. Tops are a process. They take longer to turn down. You don't typically find that much in terms of spiky behavior where it just goes straight up and then straight down the other side. Usually it hangs around the highs for a while before it decides to come down. So this is why you'll see a lot of these hammer candlestick or long-legged candlesticks down here around bottoms, because bottoms are an event. So the question as to how you connect them really is just more of by your eye. What makes sense? There is no right, there is no wrong. It's just usually we're looking for whatever touch points touch the greatest number of tests of that particular channel is what makes sense. So what does this do for me? Again, we talked about the longer term trend line creates these opportunities to be able to test. It's a common area where everybody sees it. It's not so common though when we look at this smaller time frame channel going to the downside, right? It's not as obvious for that. So what I'd like to use this for, though, is there's another law that I go by, which is descending patterns break to the upside eventually. It has to, right? It's a law of physics. What goes down must go up eventually, and what goes up must go down. So the same thing applies to the other side. Ascending patterns will typically break to the downside. Now, I'm going to throw a little twist into this. What I typically see is that a pattern moving to the upside will eventually turn into, you guys know the term FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, which is exactly what this was here. So this parabolic tail to the upside, a rising pattern like this will typically break out to the upside. It'll break above the upper trend line first before finally failing and then eventually breaking that lower trend line. So this is typically what happens, is that a rising pattern like this, once everybody decides that it is a rising pattern, and all of a sudden they're sitting on the sideline and they say, I'm missing out on this move, I've got to get in it. This is where the FOMO hits on the chart, and this is where we get into that sort of parabolic movement. Guess what? The same thing happens to the downside. The same thing happens to the downside. This is usually where all of a sudden the price will break the lower trend line and really fall off a cliff. And this is a good sign if you want the end of that particular sell-off, because it's just about to do the exact opposite as what happened over here. So the same thing happens in reverse. It's almost a mirror. So this is why I'm kind of looking for this to kind of create that capitulation. We may not get it. We may not get it, guys. So somebody pointed out to me recently that we don't have the same mix of short sellers in the market because frankly, it's difficult to short Bitcoin. You can't do it. You've got to have a margin account to be able to do it, and only certain brokers will allow you to do that. And depending on how tough to borrow it is, I've never tried it myself. I have no interest in doing it. I would rather wait until we get derivatives and true options to be able to take a bearish position on something like Bitcoin in a limited risk fashion. But that being said, there's still the ability for a panic selling opportunity where the price will actually drop out of a descending pattern like this to the downside. The lower trend line will get violated, and that's usually right around the time that we get the reversal, because this is the waterfall decline, and then all of a sudden this selling dries up. There's nobody left to sell, and then it has to go higher from there. So once again, I've managed to take a fairly simple concept, which is trend lines and rising and falling patterns, and turn it into something a little bit more complicated than it really needs to. But this is one of these fundamental tools that I believe in, is trend lines and understanding patterns and what the price is telling you. And oh, by the way, in TradingView, the way to get to a trend line here is simply this tool right over on the left-hand side. And you can see that I've got this sort of pulled out as a trend line, and I can select the color for it if I want to. You know, so there's orange, or I can turn this into, you know, pink if I want to. There's anything you can do to this. So it's just the drawing tools that come with TradingView, I think, are actually pretty good. So I do have some commentary on charts in the altcoin section of the written part of the newsletter down at the bottom. So read those if you get a chance, because I'm looking for some input on different charting platforms besides TradingView. Okay, let's move on here. Let's go through the top 10 coin analysis. Most of these are really in the same patterns as before. We've gotten a little bit of a liftoff. I'm sure everybody's gotten a little bit more positive relief in their block folio that you're looking at your portfolio with lately, so that's got to make you happy. However, we just still haven't gotten release off the bottom yet. We're still not back to the highs or anywhere near that. So actually, Ripple has been one that's actually broken this trend line, and I don't know if this is just going to lead to another lower high and roll over or not. We'll have to see whether or not it's able to build upon this. This is what I'm looking for from Ripple. If it's going to get anywhere, what's going to happen is it's going to come down here, print some form of higher low, and then a higher high subsequently. That's your change in polarity. That's where I would want to be looking to add again if I wanted to get back into Ripple. Still in it, by the way. So here's Bitcoin Cash again. Nice move up to the trend line. Hasn't been able to get through it. So here's Cardano starting to print some more candlesticks. So now we've gotten about a month of Cardano under our belt, and we're starting to print some more candlesticks. We have a more defined descending trend line. Here's Litecoin. Litecoin is also broken above there, but is unable to get any real traction, unable to really print any form of significant lower high yet. So waiting for this to punch the ticket on a higher low, higher high combination, start the reversal. Here's Stellar Lumen. This one is still just kind of suffering to the downside. Most of these are in the same position here. Neo is still in a primary downtrend. This is still a lower high. I'd like to see if it's able to print a higher low. This is a large candle combination down here. That's quite a range that went all the way from about 100 down to 70 and pierced through there. You can see again, like I say, that tops are a process, but bottoms are an event. So what I'm hoping is that this is an event and it starts to get it on, prints a higher low, and then breaks this trend line, and off she goes. Next one on the top 10 is EOS, and no patterns really worth talking about there. And then here's NEM as well too. Very, very long process working itself to the downside. So far, this is only a lower high. It appears to be breaking that trend line, but it hasn't done so in a very stunning fashion. And some of the other ones that we've been looking at, Walton Chain is still kind of consolidating and more of a flag or pennant pattern. Omisego is still doing kind of the same thing as everybody else. Icon has come down quite a bit, formed a lower high now. Want to see that higher low hold at this point. I don't want to see it come down below this point, but we'll see. And that is pretty much it. There's actually one more I want to bring up, which is Monero has actually come pretty strongly off the bottom here to the next lower high. We'll see once again if this is able to print not only after that lower high, but also print a higher low and then boogie through that descending trend line. This is how it's going to happen, right? So it's not about predicting the future, guys. It's more about understanding what you would want to see to show a reversal here. And in almost every case, a lot of these coins are setting up another lower high. I'm expecting the price to come down again, and that's okay because we need to set the hook. You need to set the hook to get too many people on the wrong side of the boat before the wind shifts over, and then all of a sudden that higher low prints, and then off she goes. That's the change in polarity. That's what we want to see to get as many people as possible on the wrong side of the boat and have to scramble to chase after this. That's it for today's report. Have a great weekend, folks. What's left of it, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Take care.